It's time for the Margin Matters Minute with Money Man Jason Brown.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Margin Matters Minute. I'm Jason Brown. Tonight we have a special guest with us, and we're continuing our theme on the hot button issue topic of the student loan debt crisis. So I'm doing a series of videos and interviews with people from all walks of life who have either avoided student loan debt altogether, or maybe have accumulated some student loan debt and were able to pay it off. And tonight's guest, we have Miss Amanda Parham, who has actually done both. Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. And I know you have a very unique story. You've actually attended several colleges that you're going to tell us about. And while you weren't able to avoid student loan debt completely, you were able to, I would say, avoid about 90% of it. I know that you had a little bit after school, but you've since been able to pay it off quickly. So you're going to share that story as well. But thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us, and truly appreciate you sharing your story tonight.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Jason.
Awesome. So, hey, let's just jump right into it. I sent Amanda a list of questions, and I do want to share also, Amanda's interview is actually going to appear in the next book that I'm writing. It's going to be called I Did It, How I Earned 2 Debt-Free Degrees and How You Can Too. So I'm actually writing a book as my answer to the student loan debt crisis. It's going to be a tremendous resource for everybody to learn how to pay for college, save money, and avoid student loan debt. So Amanda's interview is actually going to be included in my book. So I'm truly appreciative for this opportunity. So Amanda, let's just jump right into it. Before we get into the whole college journey experience, I love asking this question. What is your money background? Like, what is your view toward money, and how did you, learn about money as a kid? Did your parents teach you anything, friends, family? What was your attitude toward money growing up?
Yeah, so growing up, I knew money was important. Money is what enabled my parents to provide for me and themselves. Both of my parents worked, and I realized early on that I would need money to kind of afford the things that I wanted. So I got my first job at 16. And so having a job allowed me to do many of the extracurricular activities that I wanted to do while in high school, such as, going to the movies with friends, having meals, like attending concerts and sporting events. But it also taught me kind of responsibility. With the money, I, paid for gas for my car. I paid for my car insurance. And then as I got older, I started to pay for more bills. I would not consider myself, though, financially literate. I did not openly discuss money with my parents or even friends, and I was actually raised that it was not an appropriate topic of conversation. Today, I would say I'm more conscious of spending. I don't have any debt. Like you pointed out, I paid off my student loans, I've paid off my credit cards, and most recently I paid off my car. But I'm still learning about finances. I'm learning kind of how to better plan for the future with budgeting, identifying what are my financial goals, and then also the importance of saving for retirement.
That is tremendous. Now, I got to stop you right there because you said something that stuck out to me and as a glaring red flag, and you might not even realize you said it, was when you said you grew up in a family where money was not talked about, right? Money was a taboo topic. And this is such a big issue in our society and culture and country. And I actually talk about it in my first book, Margin Matters, of course, is that why is that, so to just expound a little bit on how the dynamics of your family were. Did they specifically tell you, hey, we don't talk, don't say anything? I mean, what was the attitude like? What did your parents do or not do with that whole topic of money? How did they handle it?
I would say, not to generalize, but I do think it is more of a Southern mentality.
Oh.
I grew up in Georgia my entire life. I think it was more like my grandparents, and then they passed it on to my own parents, where you don't really talk about it because you don't want to boast about maybe financial successes to others, but also, you know, if you are struggling with finances, you kind of keep that to yourselves. You don't want others to know. And I would say growing up, my parents, you know, they probably put more on credit cards than they should. But however, you know, they wanted to provide for me and make me feel as if, you know, I was not missing out on anything. And so that, like I said, kind of those initial conversations of finances, I didn't understand the full impact of what I know today from the experiences that I've gone through.
Right. Yeah. And of course, we could do a whole hour interview just on this one question. And just, I know a big issue with the money is it's just such an emotional thing for so many people. And that's probably why it's a taboo topic. But well, let's move on. I mean, of course, we can just go on and on about that. That's a big issue. But let's move on to your personal story, your college journey. Tell us about your college experience and were you able to graduate with or without debt? And just, I think you mentioned that you've actually attended several colleges. So tell us that whole story, how that ended up.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I did not graduate college debt-free, but I would say I was pretty close compared to most people that I knew growing up. I have friends and family members that are thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt. I graduated college with around $10,000 in debt. I would say that my student debt was attributed to losing out on the Hope Scholarship for a few years. For those that might not know, the Hope Scholarship program rewards Georgia students with financial assistance to attend eligible Georgia colleges and universities. But overall, I credit graduating college with minimal debt to, you know, utilizing the Hope Scholarship as a resource, working my way through college. As I previously mentioned, I started working at age 16 and just have continued through. And then I also lived at home during college, and there's some other hacks that I did to help cut costs, but overall, kind of reflecting, I attribute those three things to really helping me keep my student debt low.
That's a really good story. Now, tell us. Well, first of all, just a little more information on the Hope Scholarship. So, how did you actually qualify for that, and then how did you lose it? I guess, and how much did it cover? Like, just give us a little bit of more background on the Hope Scholarship.
Yeah. So at the time, the Hope Scholarship was eligible for students who graduated high school that were attending, like I said, a Georgia public university. And I think it covered full tuition.
Okay.
And then at the time, I think you could attend a private university or college and it would cover partial. And you had to have a certain GPA. I believe you had to have at least a 3.0 GPA at the time.
Okay.
I don't know if those have changed. But from there, having the Hope Scholarship, I went to, I started out at public college. So right then and there, that covered covered my tuition. And then for some of the extra expenses, like I said, I lived at home, which kind of cut down those housing and meal expenses. And then I continued to work. And so working, you know, I had at least some sort of income coming in, which covered kind of books and kind of those additional expenses that you might not think of initially when preparing to go to college.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the reason I lost the Hope
That's I was about to ask you that.
Yeah. So at the time, I had the Hope Scholarship. I was also working 3 different jobs.
Okay.
And working, so you can imagine working so many different jobs. I was attending school full-time as a full-time student. and then probably working about 30 hours a week. And I just did not factor in time to actually study. And so because of this, my grades did suffer, and I lost Georgia's Hope Scholarship as my GPA no longer met the requirements to obtain it. So, yeah.
Okay. So we'll back up a little. So you had to maintain a 3.0. Is that?
I believe at the time,
throughout
yes.
college to keep the scholarship going. And then from what I understand, I think you had to have a 3.0 in high school to qualify for it when you graduate high school, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's back up. So let's talk about all the jobs you were working. What kind of jobs were you working while you're in school?
So I always worked in the restaurant industry. So I worked as a waitress, and then for a while I was working at like a bar too, to kind of get those really late night shifts. And then I also worked in a nursery and with children for some additional income that was coming in.
Okay. And then you were doing, so you had a restaurant job as a server, and you were a bartender? Or
Bartender / server. So basically two restaurant jobs.
Okay.
And then two different restaurants.
Okay. And then, so when did you actually go to class?
Exactly.
When were your classes? Over the lunch hour or what?
Yeah. So I picked a class schedule. Initially, I went to Georgia State. Georgia State's a rather large school even then. So I was able to kind of find class times that fit around a working schedule. So I might attend morning classes Monday and Wednesday, get out, work a lunch shift at, one job, and then head over to a night shift at my other restaurant job. And or on the weekends, do some childcare responsibilities for others, work at the nursery, and then work other restaurant shifts too. So I always found a way to pick my class schedule so that it would allow me to work, and then initially work as much as I could, not realizing the amount of time that I would need to invest to actually study to maintain those grades.
Wow. That is something. So my next question, you kind of already been talking about it, but what challenges did you face paying your way through school? And so we can wrap in, I want you to talk a little bit more about, you've attended 3 different colleges. So just tell us that story. Like, how did that happen? And then the challenges, I guess, would be, because what you just explained, working all those jobs and going to school full time, you're juggling a lot of balls in the air, right? You got a lot of stuff you're managing and a lot of stuff going on. But so what challenges did you face? Well, specifically the financial challenges, I'm sure were after you lost the Hope Scholarship. So at what point did you lose the Hope Scholarship? And then talk about how that changed with, the finances and stuff.
Yeah. So like you said, the biggest challenge was, not maintaining good enough grades for that financial assistance, and not really realizing how important that was. So I attended, like I said, I started out at Georgia State. I attended 2 semesters. I was a commuter student. By the time the end of my second semester, that is when I was no longer eligible for the Hope Scholarship. My GPA had just dropped below the threshold. Right. So during this time, Georgia State, it was a more expensive school. I felt like I wasn't performing as well as I thought I would there. And so to kind of help with expenses and to try and figure out what exactly I wanted to do, I transferred schools. I transferred to a small community college in Barnesville, Georgia, called Gordon State College.
Okay.
So from there, I was able to pay for school out of pocket. Tuition wasn't too expensive. I had been working, so I had money to save. But also while I was there, I was trying to do everything I could to avoid taking out student loans.
Right.
So while I was paying out of pocket for school, the major that I was pursuing at the time did not interest me.
Okay.
And so I only attended there briefly, I think 2 semesters, but I actually took a semester off to really reevaluate what I wanted to do professionally.
Okay.
And so during this time, I continued to work, continued to save. I did a lot of research into, what I actually wanted to do, what college might be a good fit for me, and how could I get the Hope Scholarship back? Like, what did I need to do to get that financial assistance? And so from there, my third and final school of choice was Clayton State University. I transferred there. While the tuition there was reasonable, it was still slightly more expensive. And so that's where I had to take out those student loans to cover the costs because I did not have enough money saved. However, I went into Clayton State knowing that I was determined to get that Hope Scholarship back to cover tuition for future semesters and to keep my student debt low. So again, I took about $10,000 out in student loans to cover tuition, I think for 2 or 3 semesters. After a few semesters, I was eligible for Hope Scholarship again, and I did get that back, but I also continued to work too. I only worked a single job and made time to actually study so I could maintain those good grades. And I found a really good balance between school and work.
Okay. Yeah. You got a lot of, wow, what a story. So I didn't realize you could get so many follow-up questions here. I didn't realize you could get the Hope Scholarship back. So it was just a matter of getting the GPA back up to the 3.0. Is that all you needed to do
at the time you're only eligible for I shouldn't say eligible, you're evaluated at certain credit hours. So as soon as I got, 3.0 or above, I couldn't necessarily get it back. I had to wait for the next credit threshold to be evaluated and get it back. And so I think it was at, if I remember correctly, it was like maybe like 30, 60, 90, and so forth for evaluation.
I see. Okay. That's great that you were able to reclaim some of that scholarship money. And another question I was thinking, since I don't really know where all those universities are located, were you able to commute because you said you lived at home? Were you able to live at home for all 3 of those different schools?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
All the colleges I attended were within an hour radius of where I lived.
Cool.
Starting out at Georgia State, we all kind of know Atlanta traffic, but typically I could get to college in about 20 to 30 minutes, depending when my classes were and depending on traffic. Gordon State College in Barnesville was my furthest commute.
Okay.
It was about 45 miles from my house. Again, I tried to time when I had classes to, maybe like 2 days a week, and I tried to cram them all in those days so that way that would help with my commute. And then Clayton State was actually a college in my hometown, and so my commute, became a 5-minute commute.
Wow,
that was really nice.
That's convenient. So the time you said you took a semester off at some point. Now, did you also take that time off to work and maybe build up some more savings? Yes. Okay, you took advantage of that time as well to continue working. Yeah. Okay, I was going to ask you that to clarify that. Well, that's great. Now let's get into, so you graduated 2013, you said? Yes. So you graduated 2013 from Clayton State, and you got your degree in communications, media studies, very good degree. Now you said you did graduate, you had about $10,000 of student loan debt. So walk us through the process of, because you said you're debt free, you paid that off. So tell us how you were able to do that, how long it took you to do it, and what your strategy was with that.
Yeah. So looking back, I only accumulated about $10,000 in debt. So following graduation, I'll admit I did not prioritize my student loan debt. I did wait until it was required to pay on the loans. I think at the time you had like a kind of a 6-month period. And then initially, I was paying like the bare minimum that was due.
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize how high my interest rates were on my student loans. And, I felt like I wasn't making any progress while I was continuing to work at this time and take on internships. My income was still inconsistent. And so I felt like I did prioritize other things. But as I would say within a year and a half, I kind of got my act together. I, had my first professional job. I had a steady income coming on, and I actually realized, like I said, the significance of that interest and the importance of really getting that student debt down, so that I could live debt free and focus my now steady income elsewhere, such as, retirement, more adult bills and things like that.
So, tell us what the interest rate was that you were mentioning. The interest rate was so high. What was it? Do you remember what it was?
I don't fully remember, but I felt like it was like 15 to 18%. For whatever reason, I thought it was
okay. I didn't know that was that high. So I guess maybe they keep it low while you're in school, and then after you're out of school, the rates go up. I'm not really sure how that works.
Yeah, I don't remember either. And I do know, I think my loan was more through a private entity.
Okay, I was going to ask you that too. So it wasn't a government,
no.
So whatever, subsidized or whatever. So you went to a private, like a bank or a private lender.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, that's why. Yeah, I think the government rates would be a lot lower than that, from what I understand. But yeah, if you went to a private lending institution, they can pretty much charge you whatever they want. Which 15% is a very, very high interest. That's like basically like a credit card.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to pay that off?
So I would say from the 6 months to, that's when I first started making payments.
Right.
And again, I would say probably the first year I did minimum payments, and that's when I noticed
I got you.
Hey,
the interest
is not going down.
That's right. That's how they get you.
But once I realized that, I set a financial goal to pay it off within a year and a half, which I did. And so
that's very good.
If memory serves me correctly, I believe I paid off my student loan in 2016.
Okay, so that's really good. So you were able to knock that out. And so you're telling me, you said you had no other debt. You paid off your car. You no credit card debt either?
I had credit card debt, not a lot, but I had various credit cards because, again, my income while I worked the entire time, there were things that I wanted to do, such as, go on vacations. And I still wanted to have that, college life. And so I would put it on credit cards, and then I started having several. So I had a plan to conquer my credit card debt too. I focused on my student loan debt first because it was the highest interest rate. Right. What I did with my credit card debt is I consolidated all of it onto one, and had a really low interest rate, and then also had some other promos where, if you pay, X number of dollars by a certain date, interest free. So that really helped too. And then with my car, I actually did not get a new car until 2018. So for the majority of my college, all I paid for was gas and car insurance. My car had been paid off a while ago. And so I think I had my car for like 12 years.
Wow, that's great.
But, purchasing the car in 2018, I did a lot of other hacks to, kind of keep the car payment low. Like I got a used car over a new car. I set a pretty aggressive deadline for myself to pay it off. I wanted to pay it off in under 2 years, and I did it in 23 months, so right under 2-year mark.
Wow. So currently, let me back up. So how much, do you remember what, at its peak, what your credit card debt was? At its highest point before you started, knocking that out?
Yeah, I would say it was very
consolidated?
similar, like maybe 10 to 12.
Okay.
Thousand.
Okay. So you had 10,000 student loan debt and around 10 to 12. So you're looking at that point in time in your life, you had over $20,000 of debt. And then, so you were able to knock all that out in a pretty short amount of time. That's really honorable and admirable. And then, so now present day, you're saying you don't have any debt. You're completely debt free.
Completely debt free.
Wow. Yeah. That's great. That's so great to hear. That's awesome. No debt. So that's what a great story. So great. So let's go back to the college experience, your whole journey. You went to the 3 schools and you had a Hope Scholarship, then you lost it. Then you were able to work hard and get it back. And then you were working all these jobs, juggling all these balls, commuting, 45-mile commute, man. I don't envy that at all. That it takes real dedication, to do that. So it was 45 miles each way.
Yeah.
So we're talking a 90-mile round trip commute to school. Wow. That's really, really, admirable. A lot of perseverance by you. So reflecting back, was there anything that you may have done differently, just regarding, how maybe you handled your money or your finances or anything during your college journey that you look back and say, man, I should have done that, or I should have gone to more of those free pizza parties or whatever it may be. Anything like, as we say in the business world, lessons learned. What are any lessons learned during your time that you want to share?
Yeah. I think especially during college, reflecting on it now, I really would have put school first. While working my way through college really helped me keep costs low. I ultimately lost my main source of financial assistance because I was stretched too thin by, working 3 jobs at once, and my grades suffered. Yeah. I would really encourage any student that has an opportunity for a scholarship to use it as a resource, but remember that it can go away in an instant if you don't meet those requirements. And I feel like that's something that they probably don't really push, as you're, filling out all the scholarship applications, and once you get it, that it can go away so quickly. And then kind of what I just said, following graduation, I really wish that I did prioritize my student loan debt. I waited until, I was kind of forced to pay on them. And then, like I said, I just paid the minimum. I really didn't do kind of the research and to see what my interest rates would be, and, or, set a plan for myself to, pay it off and stuff like that, and how quickly I could do it. Setting a payment schedule and having an end goal, that's really what, I think can help, anyone that does have to take out student loans to help them.
Wow, that is all tremendous advice. And thank you for saying all that, because I do think that people could really learn a lot from your story and what you've, gone through, and the things that you've learned, and just the lessons that you just shared. Because the younger generation that's coming up now that are in high school, and that they're looking at, do I go to college? What do I do? Do I go to a trade school or a vocational school, or maybe I just go and work for a couple of years? I don't really know what to do. And so, we're in 2020 and we're in a pandemic. So it's a very unique time, especially in education and in school. And from the people I've been talking to, a lot of, like the high school graduates that graduated in 2020, a lot of them are just taking a year off. They call it the gap year, but they're taking the gap year because they don't want to go to school to college and pay, tens of thousands of dollars to sit in their apartment and do online learning all day because they're not getting the college experience that they want. If you're paying X amount of dollars, they want to have the experience. It's the experience. It's, anybody can take an online class and do that on their own time. But so I think a lot of, from what I'm hearing from, friends and family, just the people that I talk to in everyday life is, people are maybe taking that gap year and like you were doing, let me go work two jobs and, save some money. And then hopefully, in 2021, if hopefully things can kind of get back to normal somewhat, and they can have the opportunity to go to college or start basically a year later. And then, hey, now they've got some money saved up. They've got a year of work experience under their belt. They've got a year of life, learning more about responsibilities and stuff. So it's just a unique time with the pandemic and how it's really changed the path of a lot of the younger generation of which direction they're going to go. So your story, I think, is really going to help, encourage and inspire a lot of people. So truly appreciate you sharing. So let's move on to the big issue. This is the elephant in the room, right? So the student loan debt crisis, the last, numbers I've read is it's at $1.7 trillion total debt in our country of student loan debt. And that's actually the second biggest debt to mortgages. Mortgages is the biggest debt in our country, and then student loan debt is number two. That means student loan debt is higher than credit card debt, vehicle, car loans, boats, any consumer credit, any type of consumer debt. It's all below the student loan debt. So right now, I think it's something like 45 million adult Americans carry, some form of student loan debt. So it's obviously it's a serious issue in our country. And now with President-elect Biden coming in, there's a lot of different philosophies and ideas of student loan debt forgiveness is a big topic. But we won't get into politics in this session. But just any general, do you have any general thoughts or ideas about the crisis and, how can it be avoided, or what can we do about it, or how can we help the younger generation avoid the debt?
Yeah. So, I mean, the student loan debt to me, it just blows my mind. I will say that the cost of college, it's substantially outpacing inflation and the cost of living. Mm-hmm. And I think it's crazy that tuition costs have increased from, 150 to 200% in the past 10 years. I will say, like, my view, and I think others might share this similar view. It seems like colleges and universities now are too focused on maybe trying to outdo one another. They're running the colleges more like a business by increasing class sizes, raising tuitions, building these new high-tech facilities, instead of focusing on the well-being of current and prospective students. And I mean, while I will say, I do value and think that, continuing education is important, but you kind of have to have a plan and you need to be willing to see it through, if that makes sense.
Yes. That actually is a really good transition to my next question. It leads right into it. The whole notion of good debt versus bad debt, right? That's a big hot button debate in the personal finance world. Good debt versus bad debt. There's the people like Dave Ramsey's of the world that hate all debt. He thinks debt's evil. No debt is good debt. And then you have other influencers who believe that there is good debt, that you can leverage debt to make money, right? So any investment in something that gains value is good debt, right? So there's two sides of the coin that people believe. So this whole notion, now when we talk about education, the whole notion of, good debt, people always say any investment in yourself is always good debt. So like, in education, so student loan debt, always a good debt. Investment in yourself, like when you start, if you want to start your own business, that's always a good debt because you're investing in yourself. Well, the problem is most businesses fail, right? And then here we are with, we just talked, you know, the student loan debt crisis. And the problem is all the things that you just said about the cost of school getting out of control and stuff. So we're having people graduate college with $80,000 of student loan debt, working a job making $30,000 a year. So there's a huge disconnect. And the bigger issue, really, the people that are in the worst position are the people that don't make it through college. They don't get a degree. They whatever, for whatever reason, they ran out of money, or they couldn't get enough loans, or something happened in their life where they just had to go to work. And they went to school for 2 or 3 years and they didn't get their degree, but they have $50,000 of student loan debt and nothing to show for it, but invoices or, you know, bills in the mail. So those are the people that are really suffering through this. So do you have any thoughts on, is education, is it still, is investing in yourself through education, is it always good debt? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I would actually say, instead of good debt, is it reasonable debt? Similar to what I was just saying, you know, continuing education, it's important, but you have to have a plan for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you actually mentioned this, Jason, but, you know, an individual that is interested in becoming, say, an electrician,
Mm-hmm.
is not required the same amount of education as someone that's going to become a heart surgeon. The final cost associated to both degrees differ greatly, and not just cost, but also time, you know, that they're investing into it. So one thing that I would say is consider I would say maybe cost benefit analysis of the college that you're interested in attending, the degree that you want to pursue, kind of weigh the financial costs and benefits to see if you could save more money than you realize. Some of the stuff that we discussed is, you know, consider the overall cost of tuition. You know, there's always that line for tuition, but, you know, are you going to need housing? What type of books and materials are you going to need? What are all those extra fees that the college is going to tack on? And then also include the financial aid that you anticipate. You know, what type of scholarships or how much scholarship money might someone have versus how much debt are they going to need to take out to cover these costs? Also, you know, think long term. You know, research, you know, your planned major and profession that you kind of want to enter. You know, will it still be relevant by the time you graduate?
Mm-hmm.
I can actually speak to this. My mom was a children's librarian, and for the longest time, I considered going into library sciences, and my mom kind of steered me away from that. She's like, you know, everything's becoming digital. People aren't that, you know, valuing libraries as they would. It's not so much a specialty anymore, whereas, you know, probably more, you know, just general people can start working there.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Good advice.
And then what we've discussed, you know, during this whole time is calculate the anticipated debt, if any, for your college career. You know, how long will it take you to pay off your student debt after graduation? You know, is it worth it? You know, some professions have student loan forgiveness programs. I have friends that are teachers. I have friends that are doctors. And some of their companies that they work for and or school districts may qualify to, you know, pay back some of their student loans. So just kind of continued researching for what that long-term debt might look like, and if there's any opportunities for additional assistance after graduation to help cover those costs.
Very good. Very good. That actually kind of, you might have kind of answered my last question with what you just said, but this will be the last question. You know, what advice would you give to students who are entering college, like high school students that that are entering college to avoid student loan debt. Besides what you obviously just said, is there any other kind of final thoughts of what you might want to give advice to rising high school seniors that are looking to go to college one day soon?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the stuff that I might say we've touched on, but research, like apply for as many scholarships as you can. Any financial assistance can make a difference in the long run. Kind of weigh your options for what school you actually want to go to. An in-state school is going to be cheaper than out-of-state school. And then you can even take it a step further by considering going to a local college or smaller university for a couple of years to get those core classes under your belt, maybe before transferring to your dream school. I think that's actually super relevant right now because we are in a pandemic. So while students might not have that opportunity for that real college experience, if they're already taking online classes, maybe finish them through to get those core classes before transferring to that larger school. Just kind of really evaluate the why you want to go to a certain college. Are you going for the name and the glory and the collegiate atmosphere, or does this school really have the best program for you? And kind of also research, like, what's the employment rates for graduates? You want to make sure the school's helping you set you up for success for when you graduate. And then I will say one more thing through my own experience. Prioritize studying and your schoolwork. But if you can have an income during your college career that can help you with those expenses, that's a great opportunity. Any money that you can earn that doesn't require you to take out a loan is a win.
Well, that is all tremendous advice. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to share your story. It is a very encouraging and inspiring story, and I hope that it helps others to realize that the whole point of these interviews and these stories is to prove to people that taking out student loans is not your only option to go to college. There are several different ways that you can get through school without going into debt. So that's the whole point of this topic of conversation. Miss Amanda Parham, thank you so much for your time today. And just a couple final notes. This is Jason Brown saying, if you want to learn more about my book, you can check out my website, yourmarginmatters.com. And my book, Margin Matters, is available on Amazon, so you can find it there if you want to check that out. And remember, my favorite saying, it's not the amount of money you make, but the margin that matters the most. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.